And happy summer, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Chalk Talk. I am Adam Petrus calling in from Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
And I'm Hale Lynch, calling in from Austin, Texas.
And we have a exciting show today. I think, we've got ourselves a head football coach in the NFL. We've got a former NFL football player, star from Alabama. We've got a former front office employee, former NFL agent, Coach Sean Payton. I think we've got enough cast members here for another movie. What do you think?
Listen, I like the lineup. I'm calling in from Denver, and we are in probably the halfway point of our off-season program. We've got OTAs this week, and then one more week of a mini camp before our break. But it's great to be on with you guys.
We're excited to have you, Coach. And yes, you've got 1 year under your belt in Denver. Exciting season last year. And so tell us, how was the transition going from broadcast booth back to the football field, to the gridiron, compared to retiring and going to the broadcast booth?
I think there was this moment when the Super Bowl was in Los Angeles a few years ago, and I had retired and the season had ended. And obviously it was culminating in the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals. And while I was out here, I was going to interview with several of these television networks for various positions. And the two that I can remember, I think, was, the Amazon Group, Thursday Night Football, and then Fox's studios in LA. And so the first one with Fox, I remember, getting a coat and tie on, getting in an Uber. And when I got dropped off at the studio, I got out of the car and I thought to myself, I'm completely out of my comfort zone. But in other words, I just finished coaching for the better part of 30 some years. And all of a sudden I felt like I was that kid again, coming out of college. But I would say this, I think there's always growth. I've said this to coaches that have interviewed for positions maybe they didn't get. There's always growth when you discuss and spend time with another company or another team. You kind of sharpen up a little bit relative to where you're at. You learn something in the interview process. But, I walked into the studio. They gave me a lanyard. I put it around my neck. I went up to the elevator, 4th floor, and I said, "Let's go." This can't be harder than 3rd and 11. And it's so. But I do think when we transition or there's change, and it may not even be career change, because it would still be similar if I went from one team to the other, because in our business, these teams are run so differently. So I think embracing that is important. But I would say that transition for me going into now, once it began, it was fantastic. Was a little bit more unnerving than maybe going back into football, and coming here to Denver. Obviously we had our challenges. You're certainly less visible in the network. There's less pressure. You want to perform and have a good Sunday. But when the day's over and the games have been won and lost, and you see the excitement in the locker rooms, you do get in your car and you drive home, and it's hard to experience what you felt when you actually won. And that's the drug that pulls you back into being a part of a team.
No doubt about it. Coach, I got to ask you, of course, you're on Chalk Talk here at Zebra Nation. You've got a lot of Zebra fans. You've done a lot of appearances and talks and met with our leadership, to our employees all around North America. When we were watching you on television, I always wanted to ask this question. You got your suit on, you got the tennis shoes on and the kicks. Did you get to pick your wardrobe, or was it furnished? How does that work?
No, it's a great question, because the first thing I'm going to say, I'm not going to talk down on any other network, but I'm going to tell you that is not handled the same throughout the industries. And look, I never knew the answer to that question, and I would sometimes wonder. So at Fox, they take care of the wardrobe, and not only that, when you get hired there, there's a symposium. You do a series of measurements. They'll do the blue suits, the gray suits, the dark suits, any patterns, shirts, ties. They'll talk with you and ask you about your preferences. And so let's call it, a package of 6 or 7 options that each one has. And then more importantly, so that 3 people don't show up on the set with the same color suit, and then one step further, who are you sitting next to? And so I would say, look, I'm biased because I loved working with those guys at Fox. And I'm talking about from top down, from Shanks to Bill and the whole crew. They've been together. It's been a well-oiled machine. The camaraderie you feel. I think any good studio show, as a listening audience or watching audience, like you can just tell those guys enjoy each other's company when they're away from the set. The same thing when you watch Charles Barkley and Shaq and Kenny and those guys. You feel that those guys probably hang out away from the studio set. And I think that certainly was the case at Fox. But no, they've got that all wired. And so on game day, Sunday, when you come in, you'll have your T-shirts and stuff, but you'll walk into the studio and it'll be in your dressing room, like, bam, there are your shoes, your socks, your slacks, the whole 9 yards. And I have trouble with color. So if I'm going to an event that requires a suit and tie, I'll have my wife kind of line me up the same way, but they're pretty impressive. And there are all these little tricks too. The tape on the shirt that leaves your cuff length a quarter of an inch. And you're wondering, how is it always a quarter of an inch? And there's two-way tape, the tie. They got like 10 different secrets that, I'm shocked that, that no one else knew about until you got there. But
that's it. There's no business like show business. It kind of like how Hale and I coordinate our outfits here today. And I went with the hat.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the captain vote.
Yes. Yeah. It's 5 years in, good to represent the sports and entertainment for Zebra. But let me flip it over to my main man, Hale Hentges, NFL tight end, Alabama All-American, that 2-time national champion. I know he's chomping at the bit here, Coach. Hale, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Coach, wanted to understand, anytime you step outside your comfort zone, you're doing something different being an analyst, you're on the other side of the camera, if you will. Tell us what you learned, how the game changed for you, maybe what new insights you got being in the booth versus on the field. Just talk a little bit about that.
I think this, the first thing that was apparent is those early 3 or 4 games for each team, especially the teams that were trying to turn the corner. Confidence is a funny thing. And my old mentor, Bill Parcells, used to say, confidence is only born out of demonstrated ability. Like, we could wish for it, we could hope for it, but I'm sure you can recall moments, maybe even as a player at Alabama, where you have a practice that catches people's attention, and you leave and you shower and you go back and you're that much more confident. And so then you repeat it. Then we've seen guys grow in the preseason or just take off right in front of our eyes. And so I think, the thing I saw from afar was with these early coaching changes and the teams like the Lions that are trying to flip the switch, or the Texans that are, every year we see 3 or 4 of these teams, the significance of early season success. I'm going to go back now. That's from afar, really watching it, because then you jump into the locker room And then you think, man, that was a big win because that team's going to be a pain in the butt now for the rest of the year. And I don't know that would have been the case had they not won that game. But when I went to New Orleans in '06, it was my first time as a head coach. And this was post Katrina. Literally, there were tarps still on the walls. I mean, the city was still recovering. We had to be on the road for all of preseason, and then actually the first two regular season games until the Superdome was ready. And long story short, week one, we won a close game at Cleveland. I think it was like a 17-14 type game. Week two, we go on the road to Green Bay. We're down 13-0, and we kind of come back, fight our way back, and we win that game. And so stop right there. We probably won a game against Cleveland that was maybe evenly matched, two teams trying to find their way. And then obviously Green Bay had been a playoff team with Favre. So those early two wins, and then we come home finally, and we play the Falcons on the Monday night, opening of the Dome, the rebirth, all of that. And we get to 3-0. And this team I'm talking about, this '06 team, was not our best team by any stretch, but it was our toughest team that I coached there. And all of a sudden, this team ends up in the NFC Championship game. And so just a year ago, it was a 3-win team. And there were certainly a lot of changes to this team, but that early success was significant. So one of the things I noticed in the booth from afar was because these games all kind of come in where there's 6-9 screens you're watching in the green room, and each of us are going to focus on one or two games. But you kind of see that happen. And this year there'll be a new crop of young teams that are trying to get over the hump. Hopefully we're one of those teams. But that was one thing that I saw from afar that was like, man, how significant, maybe even the word, how delicate the balance is of like what can transpire with confidence in a young team. And then the second thing is, I would say, working with, guys like Howie Long, Jimmy Johnson, Michael Strahan, Terry Bradshaw, Kurt Menefee. This lineup, the unusual thing about that lineup is these guys have been 20 plus years. Like the young guys are Strahan at like 15 or Glazer at 17. So I was the first person to walk into that set like in the last 15 years. And then they reminded me of it. So for the better part of a year, I just got hazed like a rookie, but that was fine. So we would do the pregame show, and then, you go to the green room and you're watching games because we're going to come back and do these halftime shows. So all Sunday afternoon, you're watching football, two sets of games, the early games, the afternoon games, with all of these guys that have basically had Hall of Fame careers. And it's interesting to hear the other opinions. And the one thing I didn't know is when you go to halftime, and let's say we're going to halftime between the Falcons and the Carolina Panthers, well, there's probably 4 different halftime shows that we do for the morning set because they don't all end the same. And so we're going to run that halftime show because that game got to the first half quickest. And then we're going to come back and do halftime for the Eagles Cowboys. And then we're going to do 4. And then every once in a while you get lucky, 2 end at the same time. And then you'll do 3, if that makes sense. But I never knew that. The experience of being around those individuals and then from afar, because I get asked that question a lot. And I always try to look, you're removed from the game itself. You're not getting, you can watch the all 22, but I would say more from a perspective standpoint, listening to those guys talk and talk about what they've seen over the years. So you do see it from a different lens.
Got it. Yeah, no, it's great to know, Coach. Thank you for explaining that. And one thing I wanted to pivot on a little bit was just, talk about your process, who you're looking for, the guys that you're getting on your 53-man bus. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where I was in that same position, in my short NFL career as I thought to myself when I was playing for the 2019 Colts and coach was Frank Reich at the time. I said, what would he want? For those guys who are on the bubble, what is he looking for? What are those, 5 to 10 guys who are bubble guys? What's going to set them over the top? So talk a little bit about, the characteristics, skill set, what you're looking for the 53 guys on your roster.
Great question. And the timing is magnificent because I just had a team meeting 45 minutes ago that discussed this topic. And, we kind of, each team has maybe a vision statement or what they're looking for. And there are a lot of similarities. We have signs throughout the building that kind of paint that picture. But we are looking for this team-centric type player. In today's game with fantasy football, and so much of it can try to break down a team sport and individualize it for someone's success. We can have success. We can win a tough game, and maybe a receiver only has 2 catches instead of his projected 7 total, and he gets bombarded on Twitter or social media that, man, I played you in fantasy and you cost me. And so all of that's individually driven. They're paid oftentimes by individual statistics. So we're looking for team-centric guys that understand the importance of being unselfish. I thought Popovich said something that was really important. The bottom line is we're wanting guys that can get coached. But he made a comment when someone asked him, what are you looking for? He said, a good sense of humor is a start. But if not, someone certainly that can laugh at themselves. And all of us know someone that can't laugh at themselves. And generally speaking, it's hard to coach those players as well. It's the same trait. We're looking for high football IQ. That doesn't mean necessarily high academic IQ, but we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to evaluate how they'll learn and apply our offense or our defense to the football field. That's important. And then, there's this term grit that's thrown around. We hear it a lot. We just spoke about it. That mental toughness to compete. Really, when I think of grit, I think of unbreakable. I think that regardless of what happens to me, I'm getting back up. It doesn't mean I'm not going to maybe midstream adjust. I'm in college. I was just back on my college campus. I had to leave econ because I couldn't pass certain courses. That didn't mean I didn't have grit. I'm going to finish college. I just got to find out where I'm finishing. And so there are some of those. Now, I haven't even talked about physical talent yet. And so, but I'm looking for traits that great players and great teams have. And we talk about it. Today was our day. We've got a vision board up, and we kind of hit the vision board. And, we talked about, number one, let's not be afraid to embrace our history. Oftentimes the new coach goes somewhere and he wants to, take down the signs or the players from the past because he's like, hey, we're going to, and I understand maybe to some degree, but let's embrace that. We're in a place that's been to 8 Super Bowls, won 3. There's only 4 or 5 organizations in the NFL with this type of history. Let's embrace it. Let's shoulder it. We talked about passion. Look, we're in the passion profession, and Parcells always talked about this. Like you have to find passionate coaches, passionate players. Because if not, and there's so much to this relative to time and distractions that it's so easy to take any one of these exit doors. So I hit a few of these topics, but yeah, they're all sitting here on this vision statement, and ultimately, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Krzyzewski said this to me once that I thought was interesting. He said, the better teams do uncommon things. They're uncommon. The normal teams would be the common teams. And so those teams that are made up of players that have those traits inevitably will begin to develop uncommon characteristics, work ethic, uncommon preparation, uncommon decision making, and then you have something.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Coach. I love that. I want to reinforce that on the grit. Big fan of what grit can mean. I started my career in the NFL when Bill Belichick was the head coach at the Cleveland Browns. I was in high school on the grounds crew, and then worked into the front office for the '99 Browns, and then eventually went to work in the intelligence community and served 2.5 years in Iraq and other places. And so, grit, getting through it all, having the perseverance, the mental toughness, and to succeed. And I think a lot of our hiring managers here at Zebra, as you describe what you're looking for on that 53-man roster is what we're looking for to bring in to Team Zebra. So, there's a lot
It's
of
exactly the same. I mean, one of the cool parts when we do something like this and you share what we're looking for the same traits.
Yeah.
We're looking for the same traits. We're looking for people that wear well in the building, that get along with others, that are compatible. I talk to our coaches all the time. Compatibility to me is just as important as coaching ability, and handle your differences. We because again, we're in a team setting, just like you guys are.
That's it. You're building a culture and a structure that everybody getting on that bus is got the same mindset. All right, let me flip something back to you, Coach. You have always, in long time, been a leader of technology and for modernization of the game. There's probably a lot of listeners that don't realize, understand coaches serve on different committees at the NFL. I know you've been on the rules committee in the past. You were influential, I believe, in the change, for sharing the data for next gen stats to all clubs. To then you have the new kickoff rule that was implemented for health and safety purposes. So, now as I'm going to say, you must be one of the longest tenured coaches active in the NFL, from what I read recently. But let's see here. There's that old famous quote, right? There's two types of coaches and GMs in the NFL: those that embrace data and data analytics, and then former coaches and GMs. Because in today's NFL, you've really got to be able to have a tool. It's a tool set, right? Data is out there to help, the longevity, keep your players healthy, look at how you optimize their performance as you lead up to Thursday night, Sunday, Monday night football. And as you go into this season, how do you guys, look, how much data are you looking at? How much time is invested? And ultimately, does it impact your decision-making as you look at your schema for practice?
Great question. And a lot, real quick. I think we're teachers. And so any good teacher has to constantly be looking at ways to improve their methods and skills and stay up to speed, because look, as we've all been around, a topic as we move, and then all of a sudden we learn, well, this isn't quite the same as we thought. And then we adjust, but we're always looking to improve our efficiency relative to communicating it. So how I had a team meeting this morning compared to my team meetings in 06 or 07, like it's entirely different. Like when you walked in there this morning, we had music going, we had a video, back in 07, it might've been like an acetate laid down over a overhead where you wrote a few notes down. It's just changed. So also what's changed is the information and the data that we're collecting and the way we're able to measure that, all right, on our players. One of the cool things coming here to Denver, we've got an analytic department, 4 or 5 guys that are fantastic. They have a wing down the hall here. I think our fans hear analytics and they think 2-point plays or fourth down. And that makes up like 0.5% of what I would consider what's relevant to me analytically. How we practice injury prevention. All of that's changed in 20 years. And it's begun with our ability to measure tangibly a workload at practice. Then you get to player personnel, height, weight, size, speed, the procurement of players through the draft and free agency. All of that data is evaluated by our analytic department. And then when we get into scheme and game planning, so our ability to get this information is like 20 times faster than it used to be. I was talking 3 days ago about my first job with the Eagles, and we had the beta tapes. So I don't care if it's 8-track, cassette. If I tell you it's a tape and I want to make a copy, we're probably dealing with a play, record, push button at the same time method. All right. Now, in other words, obviously where we're at now, everything's digitally. I mean, our system for video is just like music or putting together a music playlist. It's easy to pull and grab. But yeah, my first exposure with Zebra was 9 years ago. And for training camp, we were trying to measure, all right, what are the miles trapped? What's the workload like? Because prior to that, you'd just say, hey, this was a lighter practice or this was a heavy. You generalize it as a coach, but it didn't really apply to everyone. And we found that out because the receivers at a training camp practice on average will travel between 6 and 6.5 miles. That's from when they enter the marked area, the field, to when the practice ends and they leave. And you're looking for outliers. And I remember when the information came across my desk, I'm like, what's Brandon Cooks doing? He's at 8.5 every day. And so that information was important to me because if I hadn't seen that and we continued down that path, and then on Thursday, Brandon has a hamstring and we don't have this information, we just go about our business and then it happens again with someone else. In other words, but we were able to look at this and say, hey, let's back off. Let's just make sure that he's not overtraining. And so when the offensive linemen heard this, their average distance traveled at a practice was about 2 to 2.5 miles per practice. They got things figured out pretty quickly. I'd come out to practice and the O lineman would be like walking around in circles to make sure that they hit their number. But I think summing up your question, whether it's nutrition, the analytics, the data that we're receiving, health and player safety, scheme related, weight training, sleep, all of that has to be constantly studied and fine-tuned. And the minute we stop searching or looking for new ways, then we become extinct.
That's awesome. We're going to be wrapping it up here shortly, Coach. We really sincerely appreciate your time today and your candor. You've been a long time friend of Zebra, an ambassador of Zebra, and we have, from all the employees and the board, sincerely appreciate your service, your commitment, your partnership. But before we wrap up here, I do have one more question for you because, you have been a fashion icon for a long time. I can go back and look at Halloween costumes of kids wearing the visor and the headset to be Sean Payton. You're still wearing the visor today. I'm going to, Hale, I've got this, sponsored by ScanSource visor today, hat for Zebra, but we're going to have to come up with a Coach Sean Payton line of visors. But I don't know if you can afford the NIL fees to get the visor with Coach Payton's signature on it. But I'm gonna sure try.
I was having, like, when we got on here, it was like 9 a.m. our time, and I still had the hair gel going. And I'm like, I know I'm going out to practice here in 45 minutes. So 10:15 we start. And then when I saw you with the baseball hat on, I'm like, oh, I can put on a hat then, because it's like going into a restaurant or a clubhouse, and right away I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to put the
That's it.
the
We're
coaching
sports
hat or
entertainment
visor
here,
on.
Coach. So, hey, speaking of final thing here, you're in the great state of Colorado. Love the great state of Colorado. Now, do you and Coach Prime, get together, every now and again, talk some strategy, talk fashion? You get your pair of Blender sunglasses?
I tell you what, I consider him a close friend. I think we know each other well. We've not seen each other in Colorado since I've been here. Of course, he got here a year before myself. So I've not seen him here in Colorado. The last I think I saw Dion, he was coaching high school football for quite a while in Dallas, and my son was playing. And then I'm at the Saints, and I believe he was bringing a team from Dallas down to Florida, kind of an opening season ESPN2 high school game versus two pretty good schools. And he reached out, and he was going to stay in New Orleans kind of as a halfway point. And then, from New Orleans, then make the second day trip into Florida. But he reached out, and he wanted to be able to get a practice in at our facility, and said, come on out. We were in spring practice. We were in training camp, because they would have been starting the season. And when we finished practicing, his team was out there getting a chance to watch it. And then he had a practice. I'm a huge fan of his, but I've yet to see him here. It's been great to watch his progress. What's interesting is here's what I found. That weekend where he was coming through New Orleans, heading to Florida, he spent all his side on the offensive side of the football. And I'm looking at him, and he's one of these play callers now where I'm like, damn, you could be dangerous. But anyway, we talked about that passion point earlier, and he's certainly passionate, and you feel it in everything he does. His players certainly feed off of it. And I do look forward to the first time we get a chance to shake hands and possibly see each other here.
Well, I hope so. I may have to call Orny or Tana and help set that up for you.
Yeah, right.
Hey, last question. Just a hot topic here. A lot of college football fans. What do you think of the NIL, the way that college football is today?
Well, I think I'm going to try to answer it fairly, because I was just at my college campus with Mike Shanahan, Tony Romo, and Jimmy Garoppolo. All four of us went to Eastern Illinois, and they had a fundraiser. And we were asked that question a lot. I think in the last 8 to 10 years, college football has been given 3 challenges, not one. In other words, if we just had to focus on NIL, okay, then we could wrap our hands around it. Or if we just had to focus on the transfer portal, we could wrap our hands around it. Or if all we were charged with was conference realignment, the idea that USC and UCLA, and there's no more Pac-10, so we have 3 different, that you would say, like century changes. These aren't small. These are huge changes. And unfortunately, in my opinion, for college football, all 3 have come kind of arm in arm at the same time. Our current mode that we're on, I don't think is sustainable. In other words, I think we're going to see this thing kind of, but honestly, what's most disappointing to me, and I put this on the presidents, is what we've allowed realignment to do, because the motive to realign is to get more TV revenue. Let's face it. The SEC has their own network. The Big Ten has their own everyone's got their own network. But then the TV deal that the Big Ten has with Fox, or the TV deal that the SEC has, And one of the greatest things the NFL did years ago, and Wellington Mara stood up in a meeting and he said, what's good for the Bengals is good for the Giants, is they revenue shared that television money. And now the folks at Auburn or Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan would not want to hear that, but that's very short-sighted because no one's looking 20 years down the road and saying, hey, this is what it's going to be like if you have it all. And if the 5 conferences stayed where they were at and there wasn't that incentive, we wouldn't be dealing with where the women's softball team is going to play versus Rutgers when they play UCLA, or where West Virginia's men's baseball game is going to be held when they play Oklahoma. So that's long-term thinking with respects to, hey, how about we revenue share these TV dollars amongst the Power 5 conferences? And that doesn't eliminate the monies these other schools can earn based on all sorts of things. So I think that's the first thing that concerns me. Obviously, the NIL, the portal right now, all 3 of them. I understand how we've gotten here, but I think the administrators have failed us in a lot of respects.
Appreciate that perspective, Coach. And Zebra Nation, Chalk Talk here in the summer with legendary coach Sean Payton, former broadcaster, former quarterback, Eastern Illinois. Coach, great luck to you and the club here from OTAs to summer camp. And again, we appreciate the Zebra partnership, all you've done for our staff, our fellow colleagues. Have yourself a great summer. Hale, let me kick it over to you to wrap it up.
Sure. Thanks again, Coach. And to all of Zebra Nation, please feel free to head over to zebra.com to check out our other podcasts and blogs. You can see some of the stuff we did with Coach Payton 2 years ago. Hard to believe it's been 2 years. But thanks, Coach, again for joining, and best of luck this season. From everyone here at Chalk Talk, I'm Hale Henches.
And I'm Adam Petrus, and we are signing off with